Welcome back to Mackenzie Woodworking. Today's project is a garden trellis. And here you can see our last year's garden trellis with some scarlet runners in it, and the one on the right is the one we're building today. Using our pretty basic today. I have an angle finder there and a protractor so you can check your angles, and then I have another protractor and angle finder that I use on my sliding compound saw. And always a square, a small square, and a tape measure and a pencil. So I have some full 2-inch stock here, so this is 2 inches wide, and I'm cutting my lath out of it, so I'll be cutting it up 3/8 of an inch wide by the full 2 inches. Kind of a shame to ruin such a beautiful clear board, but it's got to come from somewhere. So. And here it is here all cut up, and you can see that it's all nice and clear. There's no knots in it or anything. So if you're cutting your own, or if you're picking it up somewhere, just make sure that the integrity of it is good and there's no knots in it. You don't have to worry as much on your verticals. These are the verticals that I'm showing you. They have tight knots in them. They are cedar, so they're a little bit over 96 inches long. So what I'm doing here is just making a mark at 6 inches. And I'll carry that mark all the way around, and then we'll be marking off the angle that we'll want on the top of these. And along the length of the board, you'll be going 10 degrees. So just set up your angle finder 10 degrees or whatever you want to flare it out with, but 10 degrees is a good angle. And so I do my first mark, and then I'll give it a quarter turn and then do another mark on the other side. And what you're after here is, so when the 4 pieces come together, you're basically creating a bar stool. I think everybody's seen a bar stool where all the legs flare out 10 degrees. And I'm just using a Sharpie here to put a larger mark on it so you can see it. And whenever I'm building anything, I always take the time to do a test pattern to make sure I'm happy with it, or if I figured out the angles. And you can see the angles on the 2 corners. So there's that one, and then there's the other one that's up against the saw going down. So those are the 2 angles that you're going to want to cut. So we'll just proceed and get them all cut. And you can see that the way that I do it, I go vertical from the saw, and I've set up a fence adjoining from the fence, so that's a square edge. I've set up my mark. I've highlighted it there for you again so you can see my mark. And I'm fortunate enough too, I have a table behind me that's the exact same height as my bench. Whenever I was setting up my shop, just if anybody's setting up their shops, I measured my highest tool, and that just determined the height of all the tables, the manufacturing tables, and all the benches. I have benches that run all the way around my shop, and I have a great big table saw bench as well, and everything is the same height, so you can scoop material from side to side, or if you're laying out long pieces, you can lay it out anywhere in the shop. So here I am, and this will happen to you too, and but the wedges will go up and jam the saw. So there they are cut, and what we'll do is just take them over to the manufacturing table to put them together. And you can see I have another sacrificial block there so I don't destroy my back fence. What I do is put a block out front if I'm changing my angles, so that I'm not constantly rebuilding my fence. So I'm making a mark an inch up higher, so I've basically made the first mark down 95 and then checked it against the end, so I'm up an inch higher. And what I'll do is I'll set my saw on a compound now, so that'll be 10 degrees tilted and 10 degrees on the fence turned. I'm just laying it out here. It's a little bit more than it will end up being, but I just want to exaggerate it so that you can see it. So now we'll turn those around, and This is the feet. So that angle I was showing you was the feet. Now we've got all the cuts all made, and we'll just clamp the top together. And once we get that clamped together, we'll just put some screws in it. I'm using 3-inch coated screws. These are designed for cedar. Cedar is really corrosive, so you either stainless steel or coated screws. They're not that much more now. They really came down in price. You use them and then you won't get any bleed out. It's called where the screws will turn black. And eventually the cedar will actually rust the screw out if you just use a zinc coated screw. And this will stop any black marks on your cedar. If you've seen anybody use a cedar and they just use a galvanized or a chrome screw, they'll bleed out black. So what I am doing is putting a screw from both sides, but I've tilted it at a slight angle so that the screws will go in on an X. And what they'll do is they'll lock it together. And it's almost impossible to pull these apart without breaking the screw heads off. And I'm having a bit of a trouble getting that one in because I didn't want to move the camera. So I'm careful not to pull it in too tight. But there you can see there's only 2 screws in that. And plus you have the outside pressure of them pushing together. So we'll be doing the right side and the left side. And I lay them on top of each other just to double check everything and make sure that they're the same and they're parallel. So the same process, we'll just clamp that together and then run 2 screws in it. And in cedar, always make sure that you pre-drill it. It's up to you if you want to countersink it or not, but it's just as easy. So there's the ends done, and now I'm putting the top portions on. And I've made a mark down 16 inches, so my first lath will be at 16 inches. And what I'm using is 1.5 inch staples. These are a galvanized staple. They'll be going in to hold the lath in place, and you can see that we've got them all the way. So the first one was 16 inches down from the top, and then from that point I went 12 inches on center. And once I got the right and left elevation done, I'll turn them up, fasten the tops together, and then I can start putting the laths from side to side on. When I was measuring it out and determining what I needed, I cut all 4 at the same time. So if you're going to build a project like this, you can get them all ready to go so that you're not going back and forth to the saw. Same process. I'll just bring the top together, I'll clamp it, and then I'll end up putting in 4 screws, 2 on each side on the top. You don't need any glue at this point because these will move back and forth, and you actually want them. You can see it coming together now. And you can see that I'm drilling on an angle, same as before. I'm trying out this new countersunk, and you pull it out, and then the power driver's on the other end. Don't like it. You can see it got brighter. Somebody just walked in the shop, brought some coffee, so we'll get this down and then it'll be a coffee break for us. And I always go from one side and the other side. And then I'll do the bottom one as well. So, but because you have everything is leaning towards the center, these are tremendously strong. And here I am. I just fitted in one here, and I'll fasten this one, and then I'll turn around and fasten one on the opposite side before I start going along and doing all the rest of them. And I have these all pre-cut, so no measurement needed or anything. I just bring them out to the end. And I don't miter the corners, I just bring them out square. If you were to miter something like this on the outside, the moisture would just get into the end grain and miter anyways and swallow it apart. So there it is there. You can see that it's up and vertical. And you can see the gap at the bottom I've got. That's allowing for the boxes. And it's good to have a 14-foot high ceiling in my shop, so I can stand that up and work on it. And maybe it's a good chance to climb up it and clean off the lights. So there it is there, and then we'll proceed to build the boxes. The boxes I've designed to bring up 4 inches off the bottom. And what I'm showing you here is Type On Glue 3. This is the waterproof glue, and the top of it I'll be coating and giving this 2 coats on the top, and what that'll do is seal the end grain, and I'll also do the bottom of the feet as well. Anytime we have any end grain that's going to be in water or have water coming down on it, I always coat the end grain, and what this will do is go in the fibers and seal them all off. It's to stop all the water from being drawn up into the 2x2s. It's a good, simple, easy trick to do. And it actually hardens the fibers as well. The glue going into the end of the fibers like that will really add an awful lot of strength to the bottom part of the leg. And when I take them down in the fall and lay them up, and before I sand them back up in the spring, I'll give them another coat. So here's the boxes, here's the gable ends, and we're using 1-inch stock here, rough sawn. So I'm using all 1x8, and each end I cut at 10 degrees to match the vertical legs on the trellis. So we'll get them all cut up. So I'll be cutting 8 of those, and then I'll measure the lengths I need for the boards to make the box. And you'll notice that the gable ends I'll be screwing into the boards lengthwise, and that'll give the most strength to the box. And then the dirt is actually trying to pull out from the box. And then I'll put a hanger in the back, which will lock in the back corner, so it'll give it a tremendous amount of strength. You may be thinking, well, if I went the other way, I'd get another 2 inches wider in the box. Well, you don't really need much wider in the box than this. But this will give it twice as much strength this way as it would the other way. You see, I'm having problems with this newfangled tool. And I'm showing you here a good principle to follow is whatever the width of the material that you're going through, just double that up. I have 1-inch material, so I gathered a 2-inch screw out of the screw bin and put them through. I've changed my drill, and I've gone to an impact drill. And I'd like to warn anybody that uses these impact drills to be careful on them. You don't want to pull the screw right through. They're a fabulous tool in the right place, but don't keep on cranking the screws until you split the wood. So I just bring them in until they're snug, and if anything, I'll just turn the drill a bit just to hand tighten them in. But you can see the end's done, and I'll just flip back and do that other end again. Just want to show you that the screws are all in. So we'll pop some screws in here. I don't pre-drill the holes in the gable ends. I like to fasten it or put it on the box or anything I go through so that I drill the pilot hole as well into the new wood. So there's our centers, and I've allowed 1/4 of an inch Actually, I believe it's 3/8 of an inch on either side, and I've fitted that in, and I'll put 3 screws in that, same as the ends, the gable ends. And what we'll do is we'll fasten that in. And the reason I leave a gap is so that all the moisture can come out of the box. I don't want these turning into bathtubs and being filled. And then whenever we go to put the dirt in, I'll just line the inside of the box with landscape fabrics and put an ice cream bucket of gravel in the bottom of it. And that'll keep fresh water in it. You'll probably have to work a little bit harder watering your plants, but they'll thank you for it. Get all that stagnant water out. And your boxes will, should last forever if you're using cedar or cypress like this. I dump all the soil into my boxes every year. I just put them into the gardens and stuff, and then put in fresh soil. So here I am, just squaring up the bottom panel of the box, and I'll just make that flushing go through. And here it is standing up, and you can see that gap on both sides. And if you didn't have any landscape fabric, you'd be able to just put gravel in there, and that should be enough to stop any dirt. But I just line the bottom and up the sides a little bit with landscape fabric, and then put some gravel in it. And no treating, don't put any oil, don't put anything in here, just let the natural wood carry your dirt. You don't want to add any false product to it. So here I am. These are the verticals, and they're 1 inch wide material again, and they're 3 by 3 inches. So I put 2 screws into the outside box panel, and then I'll put another 2 screws into the gable ends, into the end grain. And what they'll do is they'll lock in that corner, because there's screws going both ways. That corner will never come apart. And be careful to pick your spot where you're drilling so that you go between the 2 screws. You see, we'll just fasten that in, and that'll lock that corner, and I won't have to worry about that corner coming apart. These are the hangers that will be hanging off the vertical legs. So, same screws. I've used 2-inch screws all through this project, and countersink them on and pre-drill them. And you can see I've got the hangers on the bottom that support. In the next clip I'll show you doing that and explain it to you. So here they are. Here is the bottom part of the box, and I make a mark 6 inches in on both ends, and then I'll lay my end, and I'm using the same material that I used for my lassos, the 3/8 by 2 inches. And you don't want to put any screws or any fasteners into the bottom panel. You only want to put it on the outside edges. And what this is doing is stopping the outside panels from bowing out, and it'll also support the bottom board of the planter box as well. But it's going to want to move back and forth, so allow the board to expand and contract back and forth without any hindrances of screws. So it's basically just sat in there. And we'll do the same to the other end as well. But basically what you're doing is creating a saddle for it to sit into. And I'm taking care to drill in the same angle and following down the boards, because everything's set at a 10-degree angle. Sorry about my arm being in the way. I'll have to talk to my cameraman. You see all my pieces are all pre-cut. Once you figure out your first box, you can pre-cut everything. So So I plan out my first box, and then from there, once I have my sizes, and then I set up all my stops and cut everything. So there's the finished box without the hangers on it, and we've already put the hangers on. So here we are, and I've raised it up 4 inches. So what I have is a 4-inch block on the bottom. I've raised it up 4 inches on the bottom, and I'm drilling a 1-inch hole up high on the hanger boards. And so the 2 outside boxes I'll be drilling high, and then the ones on the sides I'll be drilling low. So that whenever we put in the hangers, which are a 1/2-inch galvanized leg bolt, they won't interfere with each other. So I've just changed my bit out and gone to a 3/8 bit, and I'll drill that through, and that'll allow me lots of bite on my leg bolt. And here's my leg bolt, and it's a 2.5 inches long. So it goes right in the center, and you can see that we've got the leg in now, and I'm just adjusting it. So I'm leaving it out about 1/8 of an inch, and that's just so that it's easy to hang the boxes on. And this is all they'll be getting, is one on either side, and they'll be hanging on these legs. They'll take a tremendous amount of downward shear. You don't have to worry about them ever breaking off or bending over or anything for the amount of weight that will be in the planter boxes. And once I get the other side done, you'll be able to see the process. So there it is there, and it actually looks like they're on an angle, but they're not. They are square. It's just the angle of the camera. And you can see how you can just pick them up, just give them a brush out, and then they just hang right back up again. And this is for 2 reasons: for putting away in the winter time and for starting in the springtime. I do this so I can pull off my boxes, put them in the greenhouse or a warmer place or up against the wall early in the spring, and then I can start my beans or flowers or whatever's going to go into it. What we use is, because these are decorative as well, but I like these scarlet runners. They have beautiful red flowers. So we'll proceed to the other side. What you want to do is do the other side. And what I'm using here is a Japanese pole saw. I didn't own one of these for years. I just got one a couple of years ago, and they're wonderful in their spot. And they work great for this. I actually have 3 or 4 of them now. I was a stickler for wanting to use European tools and saws, but these pole saws are quite nice, and they're really sharp. So if you get yourself one, be very careful. These blades, they are extremely sharp. I don't know how they do the set on them or whatever, but so you want to cut off the tail ends of these hangers on each side. You can see the one on the other side is done. And I've just laid up the 2 feet so you can see straight across to the other side. There's no tail sticking out, and the 2 of them are flush. And now I'm filling in with the joining sides, and I'm just showing you here if I was to drill there, my bolt would hit the other bolt, so I drop down about 1 inch farther, and that's why I've got the legs on these quite high, so that I can have room to put the different leg bolts in. So one will be high and one will be low. And I'll just drill that through and put the other hanger into it. I apologize again for my arm. It's a hard angle to get at, but just switching out to 3/8 bit, and I'll just go through. You can see how much lower the hole is compared to the other hole. just drilling the pilot hole through. And whatever size of bolt you're using, whatever leg bolt, make sure that you size the hole properly. That you're just allowing the threads to grab the wood, especially if you're using cedar, because the cedar will blow apart if you're trying to put these big bolts into an undersized hole. So just measure it, and it should just be the size of the shaft and not the screws. You're just trying to get the screws grab into it. So I'm just grabbing a bolt and my wrench, and I'll put that in. See, it just starts good, and I should be able to crank that down, and same thing, I'll just leave it out about 1/8 of an inch farther. And no washers or anything on this, because we've designed it to come off and on. There you go, and you can see that I'm out just a little bit. And there they are, all hanging, and you can see that I'm about 4 inches off the bottom. And that's so I can get under it with a weed eater, and I don't want them to sit down in the wet grass or the dirt or wherever. If you do want them set right down, you can, but this is a good way to do it. And there you can see the shadow underneath, and we have it out in the yard, ready for this year's planting. It's springtime here now, so. And I put a vertical glass down the center, and the gap I have in the bottom, what I do is I put a wire there. I actually take these inside the greenhouse and start my plants and have a little bit of wire on the back of them, and then I install them, and then it gives the plants a good chance to grow. So I hope you enjoy this project. And there's a picture again with one done. This is the one we produced last year, and we had scarlet runners in it, and they work really good in this. And the puppies like it too, so we had some puppies this year. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you build one for you and your family or friends. And if you like it, please subscribe.